Hey guys, this is Locke. In this video, I want to share a build with Safiyyah that will basically reduce any enemy's HP down to 0, as long as they're not a boss that's immune to percent damage. With this build, you can bring anyone down. So let me show you an example. So this enemy, he has about 10k HP. You will need this item, which I will show you. But other than that, she's not wearing any other equipment. She actually does not have a weapon or a card, but she does need this trinket. And if you don't have the trinket, I mean, I'll provide you other options as well, but just take a look. So she does this, and then her passive is going to trigger. So not her passive, her trait is going to trigger the Thorny Rose trait. After that, she's going to use this weapon eroder, and as you can see, it will just delete the enemy. And it doesn't matter, like how much HP this guy had, as long as your attack can keep up with it, um, she will basically be able to delete the enemy. And if you go back and look at all the percentages involved and how this works, we can take a look at it. So basically, she's using the item that I just showed you, this item, which causes 12% of the enemy's HP as damage. Then her trait, which she ends up casting twice, it's 16% each, so 16 plus 16 plus 12 is 44%. Other than that, she has this weapon eroder skill, which does 30% of damage to the enemy, and then the settlement of the hanged man. So another 30%. So that's 60% plus 44%, 104% of damage to basically any enemy you want. Again, provided that your attack is able to keep up with this guy's health. So giving you an example, this guy has say 10k HP. So her trait needs to do about 1600 damage. It did a little bit less. It is 1465, and I want to make a point with that later. So that's purposely why I brought it down. But she needs to do about 16% of his health, so her attack needs to be enough, right? Like it's capped at 1.75, so 175% of her attack. So that has to be enough to do about 1,600 damage. I mean, you have a little bit of leeway. So if this guy had 20k HP instead, she will have to do about 3,200 with her trait, which I think is usually doable unless the enemy has like 50 or 100k HP or something. But if they do, they're usually a boss, and bosses are immune to these, not immune, but they take drastically lower damage from these piercing type anyway, so it wouldn't really apply there. But yeah, so I thought this was really cool. Now, one thing I want to show you with this is that this skill doesn't actually seem to affect the amount of damage she does. So I thought initially, hey, I can use this to change her type so that she can have an advantage against, enemies, right? But see, let's take a look now with this. She does, as you can see, 1465 damage with her trait, right? So now let's redo that. We will go here and we will change her to be this trait, which has an advantage against these enemies. And now she does 1465. So the damage that she does with her trait doesn't actually depend on her type. So it is capped at 16%, at 1 star, it's capped at 16% of her attack. 16% of the enemy's HP and 175% of your attack, but it can crit. So if you crit, you will actually end up doing, 16% times 1.3, which is the base crit damage, right? If you increase that by using, say, a crit tarot and using Cocoa's buff, it'll go up to 1.6. So it's 1.6 times. So it's 160% of 16% in this case, right? So that's what'll happen. So it can crit, but the type doesn't seem to affect it. So with that said, when I look at her character, especially for this build that I'm showing you, she's basically doing a lot of indirect damage, right? Like damage, follow-up damage, and things like that of that nature. And she's trying to take advantage. Like a lot of the damage is coming from her trait, and then also like her assisting attack, which will then again trigger a trait. So with that in mind, this skill doesn't actually seem to be very useful for damage output. instead, it seems to be really effective as a defensive skill. So if you remember, in the example that I just showed you, after she killed this enemy, she died to the other guard, which did 8k attack on her, right? So we're going to repeat this, but now she has this change, and take a look at how much damage this guard does to her now. So from 8k, it goes down to like less than 3k. It's a huge difference, right? Of course, the other guard killed her, but that's besides the point. But it's a huge difference. So let's take a look at everything involved here. I mean, obviously, now she's taking extra damage being a blue type, a seeker type. So she changes that to give some damage reduction. So before she did, the enemies did extra damage to her, but now she has some damage protection. And on top of that, the disguise skill also gives her an additional 30% damage decrease as well. So all this to say, with this build, I don't actually think this skill is that useful. Like, for me personally, the way I'm going to play her, I think would be more offensive oriented. If I'm going to go defensive, it's probably going to be with dodge buffs. But I think this is a good situational skill. But I think more of the application is probably going to be, defense than offense. Of course, it is going to increase her offensive damage. Like, for example, if you take a look at how much damage head-on she's going to do with this guy, it's negligible at 62 damage, right, with her normal attack, but it is 80%. But if you change it to this type, her normal attack is going to do 737, like, definitely extra damage, right? Like her attacks will do extra damage, but the way I'm going to be using her, at least in this build that I'm showing you, is not direct damage, it's indirect damage. So with the indirect damage, this skill is not going to be that great. So with that said, how would I actually build her? So let's go into that and I will show you. So one of the most important things that I mentioned is the trinket that I'm using, which unfortunately not a lot of people have access to. I have been, I don't know if you want to say lucky or unlucky, but I have a lot of copies of this one trinket and I'm missing others that I need. But with this one trinket, I have like 6 copies of them. But there are others that I haven't even got one copy, like the alert trinket. I don't have a single copy of it, which I really want because I want to play Momo a little bit with that. But anyway, that's besides the point. This thing is going to help you to pull this off because it does an extra 12% of damage, right? And with the 12% of damage comes the first attack, which does 16% of damage. So this thing actually ends up doing 12 plus 16, which is a whopping like 28% of the target's HP as damage, which is really, really good, really strong, right? If you don't have the trinket, another option you can do, which is not as reliable, and even if you do have the trinket, I would recommend you do this anyway, is to use this tarot, which is this one. So the Wheel of Fortune buffs, one of the buffs that it gives you is it does an AoE damage, which does about 10% of your attack plus P attack, your M attack plus P attack damage. So the damage itself is not going to be high. It was like 400 damage or something against these enemies. But it does trigger her trait. So that is going to do 16%. So whenever an enemy gets hit by that attack, they're taking 16% of damage, right? So if you don't have this item, let's unequip it. But if you just using this and whatever weapon you have, so when you're attacking with this, you're going to do 30% of damage. You're not going to get another 60% because this thing is not going to trigger. So you're going to do 30% plus 16, so that's 46. Plus, if you're lucky enough to get this thing to trigger, so that's going to be another 16, right? So 46 plus 16, so that is 40, 56, 62, right? 62, yeah. So you need to make up another 8% of damage somewhere, which you might do with an ally attacking or something, but it's only 8%, and it might even you might even end up making that 8% with just the damage that you do with this attack. Like it does 10% of your P attack plus M attack damage. Sometimes that might be enough to make up the extra 8% that you need. Maybe sometimes that's not. Maybe it is. I don't know. But that is there. That is a that is one way you can kind of get around not having this trinket. But of course, there is no substitute for this trinket. This is an awesome trinket for her. It also follows the cooldown of the weapon eroder skill. Oh, and by the way, sorry, I forgot to finish my thought. So once you get it down to 62%, you need to make up the other 8%, and then once it's down below 70%, then the hangman will trigger. So if you don't have the trinket, this might be a way you can get around it to have a similar build. Um, and as I was saying, now this arm guard, even at the first star without any star ups, it has a cooldown of 3, which follows the same cooldown of this weapon. You know, weapon Naruto also has a cooldown of 3. Using both other heroes and other things, you can actually get that cooldown down to like 1. So you can actually use it right away, which I'm going to show you a sample right here so you can see how to do that. Of course, it does require certain heroes, like you might either need to have Kakua or Akambe or both or the flag, but there are ways to do it. So I'm going to just show you, and I have the flag equipped, which I need, and there we go. So Kakua might get lucky and she might reduce the cooldown with this with the happiness buff. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't, I don't know. Let's assume that she doesn't. So if she doesn't, I'm going to have her use this. Oh wait, so she did use the happiness buff. So I'm going to take Kakua out, and we're going to pretend that the happiness buff did not exist. But if the happiness buff does exist, that obviously reduces the cooldown by 1. But let's do it without it. So another way you can do it is with Akambe and the flag. So in this case, I'm going to do that. Oh, I just realized she might not survive this because this thing is going to do too much damage to her. But let's see. Hopefully, maybe she can survive with this. I don't know. We'll see. Oh, and I forgot to put the flag as well. Oops, sorry. Let's just see if she survives. She doesn't survive. Okay, we'll have to redo this anyway. Sorry about that. Let me just quit and start right again. Okay, we have the flag. We need to put somebody. Maybe we will put, I don't know. No, we'll put Rabaya there to change her type so that she can survive that thing's attack. Okay, let's go again. So the first time she will first do that, and then okay, we'll put a flag here as well. Okay, and after this, you will see that the cooldown of both items have come down to 1 so that she can use it again the very next turn. So round 2 is starting, and as you can see, she can use both things right away. So if you use this, and if you happen to have these heroes, which I mean I do, and I don't know how many other people pulled on Akambe, but if you happen to have Akambe and you're using the flag in your setup, in difficult content, you can basically delete 2 enemies right off the bat, like, the first 2 turns. So I think that's really useful, right? So you can do that and that again, and just delete them, So this already brings the fight down from like 6 versus 6 down to 6 versus 4. Like, you're deleting 2 enemies right off the bat. This is also going to be, very, very useful and powerful in PvP as well, for manual PvP. I'm not sure exactly how the AI is going to target this. Like, I don't know what it's going to do with it. But I thought this is one really interesting build. I think there are so many other builds for her. So how would I do this? I mean, obviously, as I said, this is defensive skill, so I'm going to take that out. So what would I do instead? Instead, I would use the assassin. So let me just go to her. Oops, that's not her. There she is. I would instead use this assassin skill. And the reason I would use this is because it gets the hangman's mark out more often. So with this skill, I can choose an enemy. So first of all, at 1 star, she's going to target 1 enemy with the hangman's mark, right? And then Using this skill on an enemy, she can target the second enemy that she wants with Hangman's Mark. And then the spawn, the HM agent, that can also go and attack a third enemy and also has a chance to mark that enemy as well. So you can mark 3 enemies at 1 star with this skill, and she really functions by having Hangman's Mark on enemies. Like I don't want to bring a second unit to apply Hangman's Mark. I mean, if you're running an Ira team and you're running a Hangman's team, okay, fine, I guess you could do that. But I don't really want to do that. I mean, I'm also missing Dantaline, so my options are a bit limited anyway. But just with her, I'm able to apply the Hangman's Mark, and I can also target it. It's not even like random enemies, but I can target it with the skill. So with that in mind, I would probably bring this and bring these two for this specific build. As for the weapon choice, I mean, a lot of people like the blade, the ever burning blade. That seems to be recommended because it increases the damage by 20% and also gives an extra debuff. I can see how it's also useful for if you have Dantaline in the team, because whenever the enemy has 3 debuffs, they take an extra 20% damage. In my case, I don't have it. I'm probably going to be going with the Newborn Blade. I think that makes more sense for me if I'm not having this. And also remember that piercing damage is not going to be affected by the 20%. So if you read the effect of this blade, it says it deals 20% more damage to the enemies with Scorch. But that doesn't affect piercing damage. It does affect your trait damage, I think. But I mean, I didn't test it enough because to me it just doesn't seem as strong as, for example, this one, because this one increases her P attack by 6%, which is then going to increase the cap, right? She does 175% of damage, so that 175% damage, 6% is almost doubled, right? Not exactly doubled, but it goes to like 10%. So I just find increasing her attack stat just outright is stronger, and also this is then also going to pass on to the her summon as well, which is going to get 85% of her attack. So I feel like this is just a stronger one, but I can still see a case for the Ever Burning Blade. I mean, a lot of people are using it, so there must be something to it, and it does increase the damage. It does give a debuff for the Dantaline users that are pairing it with her. Uh, of course, they're going to benefit from it as well by applying a debuff so that his leader aura takes effect. But anyway, that's this build. What do you guys think of it? I mean, there's a lot of builds. In the coming days, I'm going to be talking about so many other different builds you can do with her, because almost all her skills have some use. I think the only skill that I found that didn't have a use is Vital Guard, and yeah, pretty much that's it. I think every other skill that she has some kind of a use, even if it might be niche or not so niche. It's interesting. And so with that, that's it for this video. This is talking about a very specific build where you're basically just deleting enemies that are not bosses, regardless of how many health they have, as long as you have enough attack to back that up, so that your trait does 16% of the enemy's attack. Um, by the way, if you have a 5-star Safiyyah, which I mean I'm sure a lot of people will in 3-4 months, however long it takes to get her up there, she does 32% of the target's HP as damage, right? And if you multiply that out to crit, so it's 32% times 1.3, that is enough to trigger this. So you won't even need the flying blade anymore, because you will do 16%, sorry, you will do 30% of damage with this. You will do 32% of damage, that's 62 already with this, but that other 32% of damage with the trait is going to be multiplied by 1.3, because, assuming you crit, right? So if you are able to get her to 5-star and you also have a way to make her crit, you don't even need the flying blade. She will just delete enemies with this and this passive. So if you ever get there, I mean, eventually I'm sure anyone that got her will get her there, because she's just an awesome character. So something to look forward to. So anyway, that's it for this video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and tell me what you think of this build. It is kind of niche. It's not going to work against bosses, obviously. It's also not going to work against stages that have maybe like tons of elite enemies. But if you want to delete enemies, you know, if you feel like the enemies have a lot of HP, they're coming at you too fast, this is one way to reduce their numbers. And even after you reduce their numbers and get rid of this arm guard, it's not like she's useless. This is still doing a lot of damage, and especially if you have the fortune and that's attacking everyone and still doing a lot of damage with the trait, it's all gonna come through. And if she happens to damage an enemy with the fortune buff, and then it triggers the trait, and after that damage, if it's below 30%, this hangman's skill passive is still going to trigger. So you're going to get a lot of use out of it, as long as the enemy that you're fighting is not a boss. With elites, they take reduced damage. I think it's like 50% less, so it might still be applicable. But for bosses, there are probably better builds that you can do, which I'll go into in other videos. But anyway, that's it for this video finally. So I will see you guys next time, and I hope you have a good day.